Alright guys, it's been a while since the last video, so I'm going to catch y'all up on everything that's happened. Charger is running and driving. I drive it pretty much every day. There are still some problems, but you know, that's the whole point of building a car. I mean, you just work them out as you go, in my opinion. But as you can see, so alternator's on, which I had to buy a different alternator because this wiring harness requires a one-wire alternator system. So alternator, power steering pump, the belts, the brackets for it, the fan, which is a little too small for this setup. It's a 15-inch fan, and I should be running like the 18 or 19-inch fan. Let's see, a new valley pan. So this pan right down in here because the old one was leaking. New battery because the optimum battery that was in here was no good. Trying to think. Been fighting this valve cover leaking from that back bolt back there, which looks like it's leaking again. And then of course the breather leaks, which is common on all these old engines. New headlights, as you can see. I went with halo headlights, which was a pain trying to, just because this car has an electric motor. So the motor is, something's wrong with it, or I don't know, I couldn't get it to work whenever I wired it up. So I just had to hand crank it, which was a whole pain. Passenger seat is mounted. As you can see, everything's all TIG welded real nice. And then I got the wiring harness just thrown in here for right now, just because I'm still doing everything. Still haven't done anything with the gauges. The only gauges that are wired up is the oil pressure and the temperature gauge. Haven't even wired up the volt gauge. I cleaned up the interior of the car. I cleaned up the back seat. Cleaned up the back door panels. All the interior that I mentioned I had for the car, like the door panels and everything, won't fit this car just because this has it's a 70 Charger, so it has 70 Charger doors, and the door locks are in a different place than from like a 69 or a 68. So the door panels I have don't work. But let's see what else. I want to say that's about it. I just finished wiring up everything. Like I put bulbs into the side marker lights. I wired up the headlights and the halos and all that stuff. And of course I have problems with one of the halos isn't working, or one of the actual headlights isn't working. The halo works, but the headlight don't. But the company, I guess they're gonna send out a new part there. I don't know. But yeah. So pretty much got all that done. There's still problems like the power steering pump. The pump isn't leaking, but the steering box is leaking. But I mean, it's probably the original steering box. This car set in a field with the box not capped off, so water was steadily getting down in there. The seals are bad, but it's not leaking terrible. I mean, it leaks terrible, but it's not like bad enough where I can't drive it, right? But the whole point of this video is to go over the total cost of the Charger, right? And I don't even know if this is going to focus on it just because it's on my phone. Yeah, it's not really focusing. So I'm just going to read it off, right? So I bought this car for $7,500, right? And the rims were $500, the tires were $600, the new wiring harness from American Auto Wire was $1,000, the engine and transmission, which is out of a '69 Roadrunner, it was $1,200. The disc brake conversion was like $660, but I also did shoes in the back, so I figured it up at $700. The new carburetor that's on here was $460. The gas tank was $125. The filler neck was $75. The stainless steel fuel lines, which you can kind of see like right there traveling back, they were, where am I at, $100. The radiator was $150. The fan and the spacer for the fan was $50. The new alternator, like I mentioned earlier, because this is a Mopar alternator, was $250. The alternator bracket was like 50 bucks. The power steering pump and lines, I couldn't quite remember, so I just put them at 80 bucks, which I think is a little over what I paid. But this is just a rough guesstimate. The headers were super cheap at $450, which is not cheap for headers, but that's cheap for Mopar big block Charger headers. Stainless steel. Usually stainless steel headers, about the only other company you can find is TTI, and they're like $800-900 bucks. So $450 for the headers was super cheap. I did the full stainless steel exhaust myself. So in pipe and the mufflers, I spent roughly 150 bucks. The gauges were like 50 bucks. And then of course there's like small things that I forgot, like the V-band clamps I forgot to figure in. The air cleaner I didn't figure in. The battery I didn't figure in. The lights I didn't figure in, which the lights were 100 bucks, right? But you didn't need, I was driving it without headlights for the longest time. I just wasn't driving it at night, you know what I'm saying? So like this is like kind of like a total cost to get up and running. And then there's like little things, like I didn't include, trying to think, like all the oil that I bought for the car and the transmission fluid and like the filters and all that stuff. I didn't include all that just because that's like regular maintenance stuff you do anyway on any car. So the total cost of everything is $13,490, right? Which right off the hit sounds like a lot, but for a running and driving 1970 Charger, you can't even touch one for anything less than like 25, like 25, 20, like mid to high $20,000 car for a running and driving 70 Charger that's not completely rusted out. There's people selling shells, bare shells, like all torn apart, like on a rotisserie for like $25,000, not running. So to have this car for 13.5, just $13,490, running and driving, literally driving uptown right now, is not a bad deal. And this car came with a crap ton of extra parts, like it came with extra doors, an extra deck lid, trim for the car, like another engine, just like a whole bunch of other stuff, right? I sold all of that stuff for roughly 3,500 bucks, right? And the guy I sold it to threw in a new third member for the axle, a 323 Sure Grip. So really I came out pretty decent, right? So that was 3,500 bucks, not including the Sure Grip. So you take 13.5, knock off 3,500 bucks, it's $10,000, right? So theoretically, this is a $10,000 car, and I paid 7,500 bucks for it. So out of pocket, you know, like in parts, I'm $2,500 roughly, just because of, you know, the 3,000 or the 3,500 from selling all the extra parts, right? And even that is like still a lot of money. $10,000 is still a lot of money to fork out for a project car, right? But of course, I didn't just fork out $10,000. You see what I'm saying? Like, so before this Charger, I had a 63 C10. That's also on the YouTube channel, right? And how this all got started, like me, like getting the C10, me getting this, was my buddy sent me a link to a F250 at a Copart auction, and I ended up buying the 250 for like $1,000, like 12. It was like 1,200 bucks. It was like 1,250, and I sold it like not even a month later for 3,300 bucks, right? So then I took that 3,300, and then I bought that C10 with it for like 2,000, and then I sold that C10 for $6,000. But then, of course, I threw a lot of money into it. I put an LS and a 5-speed, twin turbos. Like, I mean, y'all see the videos. So I sold it for $6,000. Before I sold that truck, though, I bought like a little Suzuki motorcycle just to learn how to do wheelies on for 500 bucks, right? And then I did a carb rebuild on it and a new battery. So I was in that bike for 600 bucks. Sold it for $1,600. So a $600 bike, sold it for $1,600. So if you're doing the math, that $1,600 that I sold the bike for and the $6,000 that I sold the C10 for is already more than what I paid for the Charger. That's $7,600 bucks. I paid $7,500 for the Charger, and it all started with a $1,000 F250 from a Copart auction. You see what I'm saying? So you don't need to have that much cash in hand all at one time. I just happen to make a few smart choices that was just happened to be there. You know what I'm saying? Like I can go on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace today, and I promise you I could find some cheap motorcycle that's not running, and I can get it running and sell it for just like I did with that Suzuki motorcycle, way more than what I paid for it. So it's just little stuff like that, right? And so this all started from a $1,200 F-250 that our buddy just happened to send me, just because I had sent him a vehicle a couple months before that ended up being a really good deal for him, and so he returned the favor, right? So I mean, the car is, for all intensive purposes, a $10,000 car, but a fair price for this car, like if I was wanting to sell it for like a fair price, would be like $25,000, because this is an original 383 big block car. It still has the fender tag. It's a clean title in my name now. Like, there's not a lot of rust on the car. The worst rust is right over there, and then around the back window, and then the sail panel on the passenger side. So it's a solid car, original big block car, original auto on the floor. Like, it was a fairly optioned car. Like, it was not just like a small block car. Nothing wrong with a small block car, but of course, big block cars bring more price. So hopefully this shines a light on like how cheap you can actually have a muscle car for. And this is one of the more expensive muscle cars. Like, I can go out and I can buy a Nova. I could buy a running and driving, 68 to 72 Nova, the nice body style that everybody wants, for $8,000. Running and driving, all the work already done. You know what I'm saying? Or I can go out and I could buy a Duster or a Dart for that price. Somebody was selling I want to say it was a 71 or a 72 Duster the other day. Had a small block in it for like $6,800. It was purple. Nice car. So hopefully this just sheds a light on like how cheap you can actually get these cars, because I've always been under the impression that you damn near had to be rich to own one, but I'm not rich at all, and I have one now. It's just right time, right place, just had the money in hand. So now that's over, hopefully that motivates more people to try and go out and get these old cars and fix them up, and you ain't got to restore them. What's that saying? Don't get them right, just get them driving. Because I mean, who knows? If I put this car into like full restoration mode, like took all the body panels off, like tried to restore it completely, something might happen to me or the economy, or just in general before the car's even done. And then, yeah, I had a 70 Charger, but I never got to enjoy it. Whereas, like, now, like, yeah, the car looks, rough. It's got rust. There's a big dent right here. Like, there's still stuff that needs to be fixed on the car. But I'm able to go out and I'm able to enjoy it. A running and driving 70 Charger. So, that's just my whole outtake on it. But, yeah, I mean, it runs and drives. So, what more can you ask for? Alright, so we're about to go for a ride. The first thing y'all gonna notice is that there's a bad exhaust leak on the driver's side, and I can't really fix it. There's nothing I can really do about it unless I replace the heads. So, I mean, it's on the list, but heads are expensive. So, probably gonna have an exhaust leak for a while. gonna talk much during this drive just because I don't have a mic, so I don't know how well y'all are gonna be able to hear me. Sorry guys, I stopped back there because there was like a 70 or 71 Duster parked in some guy's yard. It was super nice, solid black. It was, everything you want out of a Duster, to be honest. But alright, that's I'm not gonna drive the Charger much more, just because I don't know how much gas is in it, so I gotta take it to the gas station. And my little jerry rigged camera mount is kind of moving a little bit, so I don't know how much longer it's gonna hang on. But running and driving 70 Charger for roughly $10,000 is what I have in it. Can't really beat it, guys. But alright, that's gonna be all.